but I'm just firing up Maya and setting it up. We're going to take a look at kind of expanding and developing our character animation scene. I'm just hoping I'm not jumping too far ahead. We're not going to be incorporating tools just yet, like A tools and things like that, until a little bit later. So I guess this will be like traditional digital animation, you know, graph editor stuff. Yeah, primarily graph editor stuff today. We can talk about baking clips out of the time editor a little bit later on today, but you know, we'll see how it goes. We'll sort of play it by ear. This will mostly be, it'll be less tools focused and more kind of animation process and procedure focused. But I'm going to stop right there with the preamble because I'll probably repeat a lot of that once we get the class online. So we'll leave it at that. I think I'm just wanting to take a peek at what I've got going on in my scene, and then we'll sort of take it from there. I'm going to pop over into my Discord server and see if there are anybody, is there anybody online? Have we got a bunch of people show up? Right. Let's pop into the class channel. Dun, dun, dun. Anytime there's nobody in the class channel, I like to refer to my good old-fashioned calendar and check to see. Yeah, we're slated for 9 to 11, so it's all good. It's just a matter of waiting and seeing if anybody drops in. Rightio. All right, so let's kind of investigate what my scene is doing. When you're learning 3D software for the first time, a good sort of habit to get into is to have an Explorer window open just to see what's going on. Not only is it easier to navigate to your files and that kind of thing, but you can sort of see, you know, for example, when you set up an Unreal Engine project, what folders Unreal creates. Or if you set up a Maya project, you can see what Maya folders are created. Right? So I'm just going to pop in there. Oh, actually, I'm into my digital sketchbook, animation, projects. Are we seeing a couple people drop in here? Not yet, not yet. All right, so there's the intro to character animation. Yeah, that's happening this morning. All right, so into my demo reel stuff. I think these are things that I was teaching. So the final scene, hallway fight. I haven't opened this in a year. So let's see what happens. Now, because I'm working off the W drive, which is my cloud drive, I've talked to death about using Ray drive and mapping your cloud drive as a drive letter, and I've kept that consistent across all of my computers. In theory, if I open up this scene, it should find its references, but let's find out. All right. Hey guys, how's it going? I'm just giving a little bit of a preamble on Twitch at the moment. Just waiting for you guys to drop in. Let me flash my screen up. We'll go live on that. Hey, we're getting people dropping in. That's cool. Now, I'd like to take attendance a little bit later to give stragglers a chance to show up. The only problem with that strategy, though, is I generally tend to forget once I start lecturing. Morning, guys. So I was just doing an early morning preamble on Twitch, just talking about getting everything set up for today's session. So with today's session, we've covered a lot of the basics, some of the sort of base principles of how rigs work and how a 3D character moves around on screen. We talked a little bit about the referencing workflow, and I talked a little bit about setting keyframes and setting your character up, right? So we're going to jump ahead a little bit, but not really. I'm going to try to sort of encompass the basics as I go. But we're going to dive into a scene that I started last year when I was lecturing last year. And we'll just kind of continue building on it. There's no, all the principles are the same. It's just an extension, and we're just going to be working on building some animations. So I just dropped right in, and I wanted to see if my file referencing would work. So what I was saying before is that everything that I generally tend to do, especially with smaller size projects and things like little animation sequences, I can work directly off my cloud drive, which again, I've mapped using the Ray drive. So I'm going to test to see if a scene that I haven't looked at in a year will still work. So the very first thing I'm going to do inside of Maya is I'm going to come over here to my set project, and I'm going to set project to that cloud, which is the W drive, and inside my development folder under animation, that's the folder. So I'm going to set that project so Maya knows exactly where to find all of the stuff it needs to operate properly, right? So having done that, when I go to open scene, it should take me right into my directory, and it does, because I've set that project. It knows exactly where to find stuff. So I'm going to drop in here. Oh, I heard voices. No? That's just a little accidental unmute. All right, so I'm going to open this up. Now, if it doesn't find references, no need to panic, because what it will do is it'll ask me, it'll open up a little UI window asking me where the path is for this asset or that asset. And you just redirect it to the assets. Let's say you've moved assets from one folder to another. You'll just have to let Maya know that that asset has moved. So again, this is all using that referencing workflow where we reference the character files in and the set files in and all that kind of stuff. While it's loading up, I'll show you sort of the structure of that. And I believe it's in the content folder. So under the characters, right? It's grabbing all my characters in these separate Maya folders. And it's grabbing props from this folder as well, right? And then there are some props that I've built in context. So we've got two props here. We've got a Wall-E little robot, and we've got an Ed 209 robot. I've got those two props because I didn't really know which one I wanted to use. Those props were free and open source as well, and I believe that they were rigged, so that was cool. Let's see what else. Oh yeah, and there are a couple of tools that I need to make the Spider-Verse rig work. So if the scene, if Spider-Man collapses in on itself, then there are some plugins that I may need to install to get this to work, right? You'll find that working with Maya plugins, although it can be confusing at times and a little bit frustrating, actually becomes a way of life. And the reason why is there are millions of digital artists out there, and it's a huge community, and they're all using Maya. Well, I don't mean there's a lot of Maya users out there is what I mean to say. And because Maya has made itself partially extensible, a lot of people are writing custom tools and things like that. Okay, so let's take a look at the error messages. So we got shapes evaluation, blend shape created by evaluation version of shapes. That's fine. Use of this data by an educational institution or for commercial purposes is a violation of the shapes license agreement. That's okay. We still got that evaluation license, so it's fine. Errors have occurred while reading this scene that may result in data loss. So I can see straight away that my Spider-Man has collapsed in on itself. So perhaps that's a good place to start, is to talk about what we need to get the Spider-Verse rig working. So just a little recap. Let's, I'm gonna pop in here. Some of you guys have used these characters in the past, right? So what I'm doing is just setting up a scenario where Spider-Man has to fight a bunch of guys, but at the same time, he's taking care of a baby. That's the entire setup for this particular sequence. And the baby hasn't referenced it. The baby should have referenced in, unless this is an older scene. That's okay. I will check that out in a little bit. Straight away, I can see a couple of things that didn't carry over. The scale of these characters has altered, so I'm going to need to investigate that. There's keyframes on every single frame. That is not good. That wasn't supposed to happen. So I wonder if at some point maybe I accidentally baked keys, or perhaps I might have been showing people how to bake keys. Yes, there's no keyframes on that one. But that's okay. We'll just have to go through and delete all the keys on this. I just want to take a quick look inside my attribute editor, because the attribute editor, if we go all the way to the front here, will show the attributes of the character. So I can see that it's been scaled up to 1.3. And I'm just double checking the scale on all these guys. So this is scale 1. That is scale 1.3. So we're going to need to fix that. Yeah, quite a few of these guys have keys on every single frame. So that's not good. But I'll show you how to sort that. I'm just sort of coming in here, reevaluating the scene. Okay. And this needs to be 20. Oh yeah, so I'm going to walk you through all the stuff that I'm doing. Okay, so I'm taking a look at the timeline here and setting up a frame range for myself on this time slider in an attempt to figure out what I'm going to do or how long my little sort of animation piece is going to take. Now, ideally, I have jumped past a whole bunch of different steps to jump in here and teach you guys animating. One of the largest steps that I've jumped over is pre-production planning using storyboards and things like that, right? And here's why this is really important to keep in mind. A lot of tutorials that you see on YouTube will just dive in and start animating. I will be teaching you today by just diving in and animating. That is not the proper way to do it. It's absolutely not the proper way to do it. And when I mean proper, I don't mean here's a bunch of strict rules you have to follow or else. The proper way to do stuff is my warning to you that if you don't do this, you will be doing a lot of hair pulling, frustration, freaking out, high anxiety, running around the house, kind of panic, if you don't take certain steps in the beginning, right? The rules that I give you are not rules so I can be dictatorial. It's to save you a lot of heartache and pain in the long run, right? So some of these may be acutely painful, others may not. Others might fall in between, right? So what I mean by acutely painful, if you don't optimize your geometry in the beginning and you build out a scene and your scene has a million polys floating around in it, when it comes time to render, that's going to be an acutely painful experience for you. Number one, your frames will take like 20 minutes a frame to render. And when you do the mental math calculation, which nobody does, everybody just hits render and hopes for the best. But if you did do the mental math calculation, 20 minutes a frame, it would take you like 30 years or something like that to render 1 minute. That's pain number one. Pain number two is then you have to go in and optimize every single piece of geometry so you can get the render to go faster, which can oftentimes mean remodeling objects from scratch. And that is a nightmare if you've got hundreds of props in your scene, right? So when I say rules, especially in terms of pre-planning, it's to save you those types of headaches. Those headaches happen because as an artist, you generally tend to go, screw it. Forget about the rules. I just want to create. I'm going to go in and model. Now open up ZBrush, forget all the rules, 4 million polys. Now I can sculpt and get the detail that I want. Yeah, cool. I get it. I totally get it. It'll bite you in the ass in the long run. Okay, so with animation, the step that is missing is pre-production planning. So you sit down and you create your storyboards, you time out your storyboards, you put it in Premiere, you edit in Premiere, and you watch it back like a movie, and then you know, this scene will take 5 seconds. I will therefore need this number of frames. So then you would be armed with exactly what you need to put in here. You might go, okay, I'm going to be 240 frames in this, right? We don't have that, right? Same with all the poses. I'm going to be making up a lot of these poses on the fly because I haven't mapped out the story in my head, right? And I think it'll be a useful exercise because you will see how complicated it can quickly get. Rules. There you go. Yeah. Misquoted by the press. Okay, so you'll see how quickly it becomes because I have to animate 4 characters, and to do it without any pre-production planning is a little bit of a nightmare, but let's go for it, right? Mostly because I want to teach you guys, right? Okay, so let's take a look at how these characters were brought in. Now, they're meeting in an alleyway. You can see I've just put in a placeholder prop for the alleyway. And let's take a look at our reference editor, right? So straight away, we can see that these characters are actually being pulled from these locations here, right? So that's where those characters are coming from. What does that mean? That means if I open up the jack_rig.maya file, I'll get a T-pose. I can still work on it. I can model it. As long as I don't change the skeleton or the animation controls, it'll be fine, right? I can remodel the character, reskin it to the same joints, etc., right? And the same with the Wall-E characters there. It looks like the baby's not in there, but that's all right. I'll track that one down. Okay, so actually, when I scrub the timeline, is there animation on those controls? All right. So let's start off by talking about how we can clean off sort of some errant animation that might appear on one of our controls. This will be good because it's not just applicable to keys every single frame. It's in case you do a bunch of keyframes and you want to delete your work and start again, right? So you can delete your keys directly in the timeline by holding down the shift left mouse button click, highlighting all this, right-clicking, and deleting from here. Now, you have to use this delete because this delete is different from this delete, which is also different from hitting the delete key. They all do something different, right? If you just want to delete keyframes only, you have to right-click and do it in the timeline, right? I'll show you. I've selected these keys and I hit just the delete key. It's actually not going to let me do it, right? But what I was expecting it to do was to completely delete the character. It's not going to let me do it from the menu because this character setup guy was smart enough to lock that out for me. So I'm going to right click and delete those keys, and those keyframes are gone. You can also come up to these individual channels, right click, and in the channel box, you can come up to these individual channels, right click, and break those connections. Why break connections? Well, because if we come into the Windows, and I'm going to go into my node editor. Now, with that selected, I'm going to take a look at what nodes are plugged into that control, right? Don't worry if this freaks you out. I'll walk you through it in just a sec. So I'm going to turn on what nodes are plugged into and out of that particular one. Yeah, I can frame up on it, right? So this is what is actually happening underneath the hood in terms of Maya, right? So for that particular controller, right, there's information that's being plugged into it and information coming out of it and being passed to other nodes. So essentially what the node editor does is a graphical representation of how different operations connect inside of Maya. You don't really have to kind of get to know that now. Probably closer towards the start of the 3rd year, you should become familiar with the node editor, right? So one of the things you can do in the node editor is wire up different elements together. The wonderful thing about working in a node editor is it's quite visual. And you can see the connections of what one node is doing in terms of data passing to another. So what do I mean? So if I were to take this and translate it, right, that node will pass translation data up to something else, right? You can right click on these, or actually you can highlight these guys and disconnect them, right? Undo that. That's basically what you do when you come in here and grab all these guys and right click and break connections, right? It will break, you can see it in the node editor. It breaks all those connecting lines and says, okay, there's no data going from one spot to another. Which is also the same as shift selecting it in the timeline and hitting delete. So those three areas are kind of interconnected. Just the regular Windows functions of deleting stuff is the same as going to the channel box and breaking those connections, which is the same as going into the node editor and just uncoupling those cables, right? The reason why I wanted to show you this is to show you how everything is sort of interconnected inside of Maya, right? So that means I probably have to go through and do this for everything. I just want to set the scale on my master controller to 1. Yeah, that's the right scale. I'm wondering why we had a bunch of animations on there. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to break those connections there. Which method you use is really up to you. I usually kind of gravitate to the closest control and then use that. Yeah, that's exactly the size that they're supposed to be, right? Okay, so let me save that off. This, again, this is just a little bit of house cleaning, but my opportunity to show you a few new areas inside of Maya in terms of animation. Some new unreads. No, that's not you guys, is it? No, that's not you guys. Right. Okay, so any questions so far? I know for some of you, I just did an intro for animation and then just suddenly dived into some of the guts of Maya. But I'm only just revealing a little bit at a time, just to kind of get you guys familiar with a few different things that are kind of working under the hood. No questions? Okay. All right. So we need to get the Spider-Man rig up and running again. But before we do, I just want to take, I'm going to save scene, and then I'm going to take a look to see if there's another version later on that I have of this sequence that I can open up instead. Now, when I go to save scene, I want to make sure that Maya keeps versions for me, right? So one of the things I do is I go to my save scene, and I open up the option box here, and I turn on Incremental Save. So what that Incremental Save will do is when I come in here to do my animation, 9 a.m. and struggling to keep up. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, let me know if you want me to go over anything again. But I will, bear with me. Okay? Okay, so the save scene, the incremental save button, will create this folder for you. And that's fantastic because it saves versions for you. So you no longer have to do version 5.5, version 5.6 after I drank a cup of coffee, version 5.7 almost finished. You know, like however it is used to name files. Version 10 final. This is the real final. You know, stuff like that. This keeps all those versions for you. It doesn't notate it though, so you just have to remember. I've gotten really used to looking at the date going, what was I doing then? Oh yeah, okay. But sometimes you can go in there and just adjust it and add a little note to yourself. Like I might come in here and then just put or recent, right? Or something like that. You know, you can customize the file name to give yourself a little note, which is something I used to do. Can you change the name later for incremental save? The folder? Yes, you can. You can call it backup or whatever, but I don't know. I just leave it. That's just one additional thing that you have to think about. Well, I just let Maya think about it. But super handy. Not a lot of people know. It's stashed here in the save scene, but in the option box here, right? Turn on incremental save. You can limit them as well if you're worried about hard drive capacity, right? So it's all good. And then I'm just going to save that scene, and it's going to save a version for me and timestamp it and date it for me. And then I'll talk about getting Maya set up so that you can use the Spider-Verse rig. So I will also show you where I got the Spider-Verse rig, because I don't know if I've walked you guys through that. And so we'll take a look at that in a sec. So with this hallway fight, now the scene I'm opening it up is oh no, I shouldn't have saved. It's dated now, so I don't know what version I was looking at. 4.76 megabytes though. So let's take a look. 4.76. Yeah. Oh, no, there's one at 4.82. I want to take a look at that. It's slightly larger than the one I'm looking at now. What I'm looking for is the Spider-Man scene that I put together that has the baby character in it. Right. So I'm just going to open up this incremental save and see if this is correctly constituted with my characters. If not, it's a big deal. Not a big deal. What I might do is just sort of reassemble this from the beginning. I was hoping to just have an existing scene that I can dive in, and then we can just start. I can just start showing you how to keyframe characters. And the reason why is to set up this scene again, I'd have to reference characters in again, and I've shown you all that. But now that I'm sort of talking it through with you guys, I might just, if this scene doesn't have what I need, I might just set it up from the beginning again. What the heck? Why not? Repetition aids in memorizing stuff. So. Okay, it's taken a fair amount of time to load, so that's cool. Just want to make sure. So there's those guys. And actually, no Spider-Verse rig. So that's kind of interesting. It's bigger though. Don't know why. All right. So I'll tell you what. Let's take this and we'll start from scratch, right? So I'll create a new scene. I'm not going to save this. Okay. And I'm going to just check my project. So in a brand new Maya scene, we've got it open. We want to make sure we've got the correct project set. I'm set at the correct project, so it's all good. It's the hallway fight, right? And then I'm going to, the very first thing I do, which is very helpful, is to save scene as. What I'm doing is saving just an empty file. And I'll explain why I'm doing that in just a second, right? So I'm going to save the sequence, let's call it sequence 2, the hallway fight. Now, what this means is now all I need to do is hit Control S. Because remember, we went up here and set our incremental save. All I have to do is hit Control S, and it'll just start saving versions for me, right? So now my save is set up, all good, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is grab our hero character and bring him in, right? Now, I don't want to import the character in, right? Because then that character lives in this scene, and if I make any changes in this scene, if I open up another Maya scene, I'd have to re-import that character in, make all those changes again, and it's just a nightmare. So I'm going to reference that character from its original location. And that's in the characters under hero, under the Spider-Verse rig. And I renamed it Hero 1 just to keep things kind of in my naming convention. So I'm going to reference this guy in, and he's going to come in a little bit crazy. Right? So we get the warning about the shapes evaluation. Don't worry about that. Click past this. And then when we grab the hero root and we hit the F key, we can see that we've got rig pieces, kind of, and Spider-Man's collapsed in. Now this is generally a skinning issue. So let me open up a new folder and we will take a look. Whoops. We will have a look for the Spider-Verse rig. Right? Yeah. So this is the Spider-Verse rig, available for free. And let's see. Oh yeah, let's see this sort of rig in action. Let's try this one. Oh, these ones loaded up? Let's see. Take a look. No. Let's go to this one. Oh yeah, I've seen this. This is cool. That is a very, very cool rig. I was super excited when I found out that this rig was available for free, right? But it comes with a couple of caveats when you want to install it, because it has, again, a dependency on a certain number of tools, right? So when you go to the website, let's navigate to the website. I don't know if this is the downloadable. There's the rig review. There might be a link to where you can grab this character. Let's take a look. Yeah, Spider-Verse rig link here, right? So it's a Google Drive link. Open link in new tab. Let's see if it's still active. Oh, page not found. I believe it's hosted somewhere else as well. Let's take a look. Everybody's using this rig. It's a beautiful rig. It's really, really good. Yeah, whatever. Okay. Oh, there we go. So we've got that free animation rig. There's the download link. Oh, yeah, there we go. So there's the download link on Gumroad, is it? No, yeah, Gumroad. Cool. So you can grab it, and it's all good. Now, oh, cool. That's essentially what we're going to be taking a look at. Not animated to that quality, because that's a very, very experienced animator. But we're going to set up something like that. Okay, so once you download that, you'll get a series of files. Let me pop into here. Into my sketchbook, animation, characters, hero. So you'll get this whole set of files, right? Spider-Verse rig PNG. Let's take a look. Where's my, there it is. Come on. There we go. All right. And there's the Maya M gear. Now, the M gear tool set is the tool set that you need to install to get your Spider-Verse rig working properly. You've got the Spider-Verse rig itself, minus the Hero 01. That's just me renaming it. So you'll get the Maya ASCII, and you'll get the texture map, right? So you can take this into Photoshop or whatever, and you can change Miles Morales' outfit if you like, and then save it over top this, and job done. You've altered the textures, and you get the README file, which is just a series of images that shows you what you need to do, right? So the big thing here is the editing of the batch file to install MGear for you, right? And then once you do that, MGear will be available here. But more importantly, the tool set will be loaded inside of Maya, and you can import the rig, and the rig won't look like it's blown apart or crushed down, right? So let me talk to you guys a little bit about the different ways of installing tools and software, etc., into Maya to make it a little bit more kind of extensible, right? So Maya generally uses a file called a .mll file, right? Which is sort of like a library file. Yeah, actually, you don't really need to know all that stuff. But if you see a .mll, that's a Maya plugin file extension, right? And it's only exclusive to Maya. You won't see it anywhere else, right? So the .mll file that you find anywhere on like websites like Creative Crash or any kind of 3D website that offers downloadable plugins, you know you've got some good Maya plugins, right? So the plugins themselves, you can see what you have in addition to the out-of-the-box Maya stuff by going into your Windows Settings Preferences Plugin Manager, right? We will be going here quite a bit, and there are a number of different reasons why, right? But the Plugin Manager shows you everything that comes in addition to out-of-the-box Maya, right? And you can see that in the Plugin Manager, you can turn them on or off. You can have certain ones auto-load, and auto-load just means load up the minute you start Maya, right? And you can see that they all have the .mll extension. And there's some cool stuff here. You got Maya Muscle, which comes auto-loaded, just a whole bunch of stuff, right? So here I've got the Bifrost, which is like physics simulations, explosions, fluid dynamics and stuff. Mash MLL, which I know Gareth, our very own Gareth, has been doing loads of experimentation with, and you can see some of his renders up here on the Discord server. We've got, one of the key ways I got to learn the plugin manager is back in the day when I was first starting out on my journey as a Maya user. Anytime I wanted to import an OBJ, I had to go into the plugin manager and turn on the OBJ MLL. I wonder if it's in here. Yeah, the OBJ export MLL, had to turn that on, right? So I got to know the plugin manager really, really well. Do you know why I had to go in and turn on the OBJ export.mll every time? Politics, right? The creators of the OBJ file format, there was some issue, apparently. Actually, I'll caveat that because I'm streaming this. This is a rumor. I don't know if it's founded or true, but I tend to believe it might be. But apparently there was an issue, not with Autodesk, but with Alias back in the day, and the creators of the OBJ file format. And for some reason, there was a stipulation that it always had to load turned off. So you had to go and manually turn it on. Silly. There's lots of rumors like that, by the way. A lot of sort of CG urban myths. Another one being that when Autodesk bought Maya from Alias, it was for a briefcase full of cash. Google that one. That's really kind of interesting. So anyway, that's one of the areas where you can load in Maya plugins, right? When you find a plugin, how do you install it? That's really convoluted, right? My favorite way of installing plugins is to get a nice executable. Double click on it, it runs, boom, it's installed, job done, right? That would be super nice, right? But it doesn't work that way. And it's actually quite good to sort of understand how to manually install plugins because you get to know the guts of Maya a little bit more. One of the big things that you guys have to be prepared for is to learn the internal workings of Maya. And what I mean by internal workings is just where certain files are located in which folders, right? Something I said at the top of the Twitch stream before you guys jumped in is that when you're learning, that I said that at the top of it, is that when you're learning 3D software for the first time, it's a good idea to have a few Windows Explorer windows open so that you can find files really quickly. You can see what folders are being created or where certain things are stored. It just helps you to kind of understand how hooked in Maya is to your operating system, right? So I'll give you an example. We can go in and take a look in the My Documents folder. We see that when you install Maya, it installs this Maya folder, right? Now, My Documents is a place where software just supports or installs user-specific preferences and data and things like that. You have your own personal way of working with software, and oftentimes a lot of those specific tools, scripts, plugins will be stored in the Documents folder. I personally hate it. Every chance I get, I try to move my documents to my cloud drive so I can access it from anywhere, but there you go. So it's default. Maya default creates a 2020 folder in here, and you can see it comes bundled with a bunch of files that help you launch Maya your way for you, right? And it's important that I mention this because we will talk a little bit about sort of how to fix Maya when it freaks out on you. Okay, so in here, you can see straight away, we've got scripts, presets, preferences, and in the preferences, not in the preferences, modules folder. Oh, I might be taking you to the wrong area, but that's okay. In the most important thing inside the documents folder is the Maya environment file. Let me pop this open. So what the Maya environment file is a place that says, look, go here, find these modules and install them for me. And it's just like a grocery list of the different tools, plugins, and things like that that you want Maya to load for you. Now, you have two places where you can adjust an environment file. One, locally in My Documents, that's just for you. And the second place is in the Windows environment settings, which is globally, affects anybody that logs onto your computer. This will be a point of confusion for you guys as your careers progress. But don't worry, you get used to it over time. All right, so the plugins folder, where was it again? It might actually be, sorry guys, it might actually be in the root here. Yeah, it is. Okay, so inside where you've installed your version of Maya, you'll get two plugins folders, right? The plugins folders without the hyphen has a bunch of Maya specific ones, and the plugins with the hyphen, that's where you put in external plugins that you download and things like that. And so basically when you download a plugin, you'll just get a folder and then you just sort of drag and drop it in here, and then that's it. It'll be installed, right? So I'm just gonna see if there's one with, yeah, see that .mll file, right? So once you drag a plugin folder in here, the next time you launch Maya, it will appear in Windows Settings, Preferences, Plugin Manager. It'll appear here. And you can see the directory path for it, right? So it's telling me, look, I'm getting this Rococo Motion Library plugin from here. I'm getting this other plugin from the Maya directory here, etc., right? And that's it. That's how you install stuff in terms of plugins. You just drag that plugin folder and drop it in here. And the next time you launch Maya, it'll recognize it. It's not as clean as clicking on an executable and have it do all the work for you, but it is dead simple. Okay, so having said all that, let's take a look at this batch file. Now, a batch file, for those of you guys who've never written a batch file before, is just a text file. That's it, right? So if I come in here and I open this, I can edit this with Notepad. Now, what makes this text file different from other files is the fact that I've added the .bat extension onto the end of it. What that does is it tells the operating system that once you double click this, run those commands as system commands, right? I don't know why it closed all my windows like that. Okay, right? Now, what we want to do is understand what's going on here, right? So let's take a look at this set Maya module path, right? It is doing this. It's saying, look, the minute you launch, I want you to go to my W drive, my global folder, my artist tools, my plugins, my Maya 2019, and the MGear 311 folder, right? So this is where all that plugin data is. So that's basically what the first line is doing. It's going in here, it's finding all this stuff, right? And it's setting that module path to this directory, right? And then it's saying after that, start Maya, right? So remember what I just said, right? Once Maya knows where the plugins are, or you drag the your .mll files into the plugins folder, the next time you restart Maya, it's just going to pick up your plugins. Well, this is basically what it's doing. It's saying, look, go find that. I have another plugin for you. Go find it over here and then start Maya, right? Now, I don't think that 2019 version is supported, which might pose a bit of an issue, but let's give it a go. right? So I'm going to come over to the original directory where I had that. So that's that one. Oh yeah, let's go back. So in here, now that I've got that path, and we've just double checked it, so it's the path to the correct tool, right? I'm going to right click, and I'm going to run this as an administrator. All it's going to do is it's going to set my module path and then start Maya, right? So let's do that. Oh, I need to do 2020. That's right. That's why I brought you guys in here, was so that I can edit this, right? So we want this to go to the Maya 2020 bin, and we'll start that. So I'm just going to save this. I'm going to double check. Autodesk has been good for the last several years in terms of keeping the directory pathing the same, only changing the version, but keeping everything where it is, so that when you have to alter a script like this, all you need to do is turn 2019 to 2020. All the directory stays the same, and it should just work right out of the box. So I'm going to save this guy off. Now the MGear version is 2019, so that might be an issue. But let's right-click, run as administrator, and see. So it's launching Maya again for me. I'm going to close the one in the background, just for the sake of it. Now, if we have an error message, that'll tell me that I'm probably going to have to go get the 2021. Let's see. Did it install? Sometimes newer versions will support older plugins, sometimes. Whilst I'm waiting for that to finish its sort of preload, any questions? Nope, no questions? Okay, so it's loaded my Arnold. It's loaded everything, but it hasn't found that. So that's a little bit concerning. I've got my edgy skin tool. Okay. So I'm gonna try and find the MGear plugin for 2020. So let me pop into here. I could have sworn I've done that. Oh, cool. So under the MGear framework, the Spider-Verse rig is also downloadable from here. That's kind of cool. So let's pop into the MGear framework here. So what is MGear? What is the MGear framework? Oh, it's just a bunch of rigging and animation tools that this particular developer, who obviously was an ex-animator, found useful. I don't know what the guts are for the MGear tools yet. I do plan on taking a look at it. There might be some very, very interesting rigging tools and things like that. But for the time being, I just use his tool set to get the Spider-Verse rig working. Looks like he's got a couple of other free characters available, which is sort of cool. And I'm going to go to... Oh, there's no way of navigating to his download link, so I'll go back to where MGear 3.4 is available. Now, there's always a danger of going too far ahead in terms of the versions of tool sets, that it may no longer be compatible with the Spider-Verse rig, but let's try it. Let's see how it goes. So I've clicked on the link to this new MGear tool, and I'm looking for the download. Where are we here? Nope, those are the topic windows. Am I missing the download button? Where? Oh, yeah, okay. Oh, right. So this is a link to the GitHub. So we'll go to the GitHub. Just a little bit of background as well. The GitHub is an online location where a lot of coders, programmers, plugin authors, and module creators will store stuff. It's sort of an online version control repository for programmers and coders. So I'm going to, let's see. There we go. So we got the MGear 3.4.0 zip. Let's grab that. going to show that in my folder, and then we'll dive into the zip file. And you can see it's almost identical to what we had before, right? It's just one version up, right? So I'm going to come in here. I like to generally come into the folder and name it the version number. So this is 340. And this way I can keep those sort of separate, right? So I got that in here. And I grab these guys, and I believe I can just drag and drop, and it'll automatically unzip it for me. I've also got a location for this in my global tools as well, right? So I'm going to probably pop over here into my global artist tools, plugins. Oh, that's in the Maya 2019. Well, that's cool. I'm just going to come in here and create a 2020. And yeah, it's the same. I'm just double checking my naming convention. And then here, it's also in MGear 2020. I know I've sort of replicated the files, but I like to stash things in my artist tools library as a backup. Right? Hi, it's typing. What's up? Well, I can do this again here. Rig that has an insane amount of controllers. Yes, an insane amount of controllers. It's not that complicated to animate a character with a weapon. What's complicated is, like, you can get it to work functionally, which I'll show you. The difficulty is making it look believable, right? Which takes a good sense of timing and experimenting with animation. While the MGear tool is unzipping, actually, that might be a good opportunity for me to show you guys. Although it is a little bit jumping around all over the place. Let me test the water here. How are you guys doing? Are anybody completely lost out there? I am trying to go through things slowly, but I also am, this is my process. If I were literally sitting here getting ready to animate a project, I would be doing this, exactly everything I'm doing now, right? So it's all just sort of real time. Okay, that's cool. That's cool. So I'm going to segue just a little bit to answer Ty's question. Right? Now, let's say we've got, let me come over here and, I don't know. I'm just going to create a couple of dummy objects. Let's create that and that. Hit F, right? And we'll bring this up here. And oh. Sponge. Oh, I see. Okay. Actually, I need a better example. Let me, let's try that. Okay. Okay, let's say for the sake of argument that okay, you know what? That's cool, but there was a reason why I use the body mechanics rigs. Because when you're first starting to learn how to animate, it's a lot easier to wrap your head around a very minimal set of controls. But there you go. It's okay. Far be it for me to kind of dissuade somebody who wants to try something a bit more advanced. Okay. Yeah, so many controls. There is a situation out there in the industry called over-rigging, right? So I don't know. I'd have to play with that character, but that character feels a bit over-rigged to me. Oh, maybe not. Maybe not, actually. Taking a look at it. All right. So inside my Maya window, let's see if we can choke this guy up a little bit, right? Inside my Maya window, let's say that flattened disk is a hand, and this extended, whatever it is a weapon of some kind, right? So you can actually, let's set some keyframes. So I'm going to set a keyframe here, and that at frame 10 comes in, right? Set a keyframe there, and then kind of whips it around over there, right? Actually, let's start off this a little bit further out. Okay, so here's how you generally tend to make it work, right? First of all, you never set keyframes on geometry, ever, 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 ever. I'm just doing this for the sake of just going through this quick, right? So we want the hand to come in. We actually, you know what? I'm gonna go over a couple of animation things, right? So the hand comes in and then snaps out too quick. So we want it to pause for a second on the gun, right? So first I'm gonna make some room so I can do that. So I'm gonna shift, left click and select that keyframe. And then now I could middle mouse button click and drag that key and put it somewhere new. Maybe 35 frames, right? Somewhere there. Middle mouse button, click it there, right? Now, let's say I want to put a keyframe here, but the hand is already starting to come away. I want to tell Maya, look, take this pose here at frame 12. Don't move it. I want to create another one exactly like that at frame 15. Well, you can control left click. Yeah, control left click. Oh, which one is it? Shift left click. Oh no, control middle mouse button. So control middle mouse button, let's say to frame 20, it won't move. The character won't move. And then you hit the S key, right? Oh, control copy paste. I don't like copy pasting keys. Just because I think I showed you last time what happened. I'll show you. I'll copy paste this geometry, right? So it didn't paste the sphere for me. It created a group node and named it pasted underscore p sphere, right? So when I copy paste stuff inside of Maya, Maya does stuff in the background that I don't necessarily want it to do, right? So I generally tend to not do that. I like to use the specific tools built for that specific operation. Let's just say I don't like to use Windows tools for Maya operations. I like to use Maya tools for Maya operations. So there we go. So we got a situation where the hand comes in. It comes apart a little bit. That's because I think I grabbed the wrong frame, but that's all right. That's fine. Copy pasting. Copy pasting. What do you mean by break the geometry? What do you mean break? No, it doesn't cause the model to be distorted. It just adds a bunch of data to the vertices, which I don't know. I don't like because I don't know what data it is adding to the vertices, if any. Just the fact that it creates a group node for me and renames my object really bothers me. And it's not because I'm a control freak. It's just the lack of being a control freak when working in CG will ultimately lead to unexpected errors that you can't figure out how to fix, right? So I like to know exactly everything that's going on as much as I humanly can inside of Maya. Okay, so let's say we got this hand here. We have a tool available to us called, that we can find in, I believe in the rigging menu. Yeah, called a constraint, right? So if I select the hand and then I shift select the gun, now I might have gotten the selection order the wrong way. It's not a big deal. You can just undo it if you have. Now, if I say the hand to the gun and go constrain and parent constraint, what ends up happening, not that, what ends up happening is that now that object, oh, let me delete this pasted sphere. Now, oh, I think I constrained to the wrong sphere. Okay, so that sphere and this guy, and we're going to go constrain, parent constraint, right? So now, wherever that hand goes, that weapon goes, right? Which seems, okay, cool, right? But it's going right from the beginning, right? So when I come on into my outliner and open up the cube, you can see that the cube now has a parent constraint attached to it. You can click on this, and if you go into the channel box, there is a 1W0 or a weighting that's attached to it. Now watch what happens. If I set the weight to 0, right? Now it's not going, right? But if I set the weight to 1, boom, it's going to follow, right? So what you generally tend to do is you would set this to 0, and I can right click on this and keyframe that. So it's stored a key, right? So when it comes over here, I think it was like frame 12, I can set this to 1, right click, key selected, right? So it comes in. Now you can see a bunch of unexpected things happening, right? So this is where the difficulty with working with constraints comes into play. Let's take a look inside our graph editor to see exactly what is happening with the movement and the motion, right? So I'm going to come over here into my Windows animation editors and open up the graph editor, which I showed you guys last class. It shows you all the different things that are, you know, kind of how that animation data works on everything that you keyframe. And if we take a look at the sphere 1W0, oh, actually, this isn't going to be accurate, because with a constraint, any value that's not 0 means the constraint is turned on, right? So even though this says, look, the curve should gradually snap that object to the hand, it's not going to work that way, right? Because how constraints work is they're either on or off. So that's really frustrating, right? So I have to come into this point here where the gun makes maybe a couple of frames before, set this to 0, key selected. So I've got 2 0 keys, right? 0, 0, 1, and then out. Now you can see a problem with this, can't you? The problem with this is that the gun suction cups to the hand. The hand is not grabbing the gun, right? So this is what I'm talking about some of the issues that you might run into when trying to attach a weapon to a hand, right? Now they all the different ways of doing this out there all rely on constraints, right? So if you look at the socket system inside of Unreal, that's just their naming system for constraints. Anything else out there, it's all just a matter of animating that constraint. So what you would need to do is to just very, very carefully muck about with the timing so that you would get that correct. Now, there are other issues as well, which I'll talk about in addition to that. So I'm going to middle mouse button, maybe drag this over there. Try and get that aligned right, right? So now we've got that picking up properly, right? Here's a problem though. Let's say we go to, well, actually, it's hard. So if we've got the gun here, right, it's constrained to the bounding box center of that sphere. Well, I've got maintain offset turned on. But if we had, I have to mime this because it's quicker than just trying to build it to show you. So we got that gun object. We got that gun object, right? Suction cupping to the hand. Now, are you guys on my Twitch stream? Can you guys see it on my Twitch stream? If not, this might get complicated. Okay, I'll try and describe what I'm doing, and at the same time, if you're on my Twitch, great. If not, you can always refer to it later. So I'm taking a box, a rectangular box, and putting it on my hand, right? The problem is, if you move that hand, the gun will not move, right? If you move those fingers, it'll look like the fingers are animating around the box, not actually gripping the gun, right? So there's another solution called soft constraints that allow the gun to be or weapon to be constrained, but with a little bit of a fall off, so that the gun moves on its own a bit as the fingers sort of readjust. But that's also very complicated to control. So at the end of the day, it's about careful animating. Now, one of the tricks that we generally tend to do is we try to move, try to have the hand not part of the equation per se. So I might come in here and I might create a joint, right? And then create another one over here, right? And let's move this guy, and we'll hold down the V middle mouse button, V middle mouse button, snap this to there, right? And then we'll grab this and we'll V middle mouse button, snap it to there, move it along, right? So these joints actually will be our snapping points, right? I can also have, let's say across the palm of the hand, I can also have 2 snapping points, right? So let's see if I can just get this working super quick. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to delete this parent constraint, right? And I've got these 2 joints. Let me just, that's joint 2. So I'm going to middle mouse button drag joint 3 onto there, and then we'll just parent that geometry. Right. So I'm going to go to my geometry, and I'm going to delete all the keyframes on my geometry. Right. And we'll delete that. And there's none on here. I'm just going to parent this guy for now. Right. So we got this joint controlling the gun, and then we got these joints controlling the sphere. Right. I can actually take this joint, that joint, and that, and then this, then this joint here, and then go in and do a constraint and a parent constraint. And now we can see the parent constraint there, but look, we got a joint weighting, right? So what that means is, if I were to take this joint and move it around, it's going to follow as much as possible, right? But I can go to this constraint and I can set the joint weight for 1 to 0, so that when I manipulate this guy, if I come over here and manipulate this guy, right, it's not going to affect. But then I can go back and turn this weighting on. I can actually set it to 0.5, right? And if I move this guy, oh, it's not obeying the, it's not obeying the thing. Am I doing this backwards? Just thinking now. But I can have sort of this joint weighted. It's not obeying. Okay, I'm forgetting something. But my point is that you can have, oh yeah, okay, that's right. So there we go. That snaps, and this one doesn't. And we'll go over here, and we'll set that to 1. There you go. So that one follows, but this one, oh, okay. Something's not, I haven't set it up quite right. But you can actually have 2 points. I think it's the constraints with weighting. Yeah, it's 100% weighting. Okay. But there's a way of doing it so that there's a gradual fall off between 2 points controlling the one. So if you had the gun in the hand, you can have the base of the palm firmly attached to the gun, and sort of where the knuckles join, maybe 0.5% joined to the gun. So you get a little bit of hand movement around the gun, is what I'm trying to say. Right? So the gun doesn't look like it's snapped into the hand. Animators call it the constrained look, right? Oh yeah, don't all the weapon itself. Notice how I haven't set any keyframes on the weapon at all, right? So the weapon has to remain at 0 because of what happens is you get inherited transforms, and that means there's a multiplier. So what that means is if the weapon moves, and then you've got a constraint system, and you move the hand, the gun will multiply its translations by whatever the hand does, and the gun will just go and shoot off, right? So you got to be very, very careful. Props have got to be moved by the character, not on their own, right? So here's a mistake a lot of junior animators make. They'll have a constraint system. The weapon will snap to the hand, and they'll move the hand, but the weapon is not moving quite right. So they'll keyframe the weapon to adjust it to the hand, and then they'll keyframe the hand, but then they'll make adjustments to the weapon. So they end up keyframing the weapon and the hand at the same time and getting hopelessly lost when the weapon starts to do unpredictable stuff, right? Best to keep the weapon clean, right? Okay, so there's that. Let's check our progress on our M Gear tools. So that's a little bit about the sort of the constraint system. Oh my God, you're joking. You're joking. Sorry, guys, I didn't know it was going to take this long. That's okay. We will set up our scene anyway without the Spider-Verse rig for the time being, right? In fact, actually, that's what I'll do is I'll open up a prior scene, but I will bring in the baby character and set the baby character up so you know exactly how that works. Keep your weapon clean. Good life advice. Absolutely. All right, so we're at 10:09. I'll tell you what, I'm gonna run down, grab a cup of coffee. So we'll take a quick 2-minute break. I'll come back in and we'll dive back in and I'll walk you guys through setting up the project. Okay, so I'll be back in like 2 or 3 minutes. I forgot to pause the stream. I left my engine running. Okay. Let's see. Oh, the intro to character animation semester 2. That's the one from Phil, right? That should be the brief for you guys. I sort of recognize the title. Let me take a quick look. April 26th, submission deadline. There is no fear to an affinity and beyond. Yes, that is the brief. Okay. All right. So let's get to, let me, I really don't want to reset all this up again. So let me just see if I can pop open this, and then let's, because the only dependency we have on this Spidey scene one quick second here. What's going on here? Spidey and the kid. What is this one? Let me open this guy. And don't save. So are you guys all clear on how to use constraints? Well, I'll talk to you a little bit about the difference in constraints. That's what I wanted to do. Let's skip that for a second. So the constraint that I used is a parent constraint. So what the parent constraint does is it mimics a parent-child hierarchy relationship, but you don't have to put objects underneath each other, right? What is this? Oh yeah, that's that demo. Okay. So if I were to create, let's just create a couple of cubes here. We'll zoom in on it, and I'll duplicate this guy, right? Create that, move that over here, right? And so if I wanted to have a parent-child relationship, I'd have to take cube 3, middle mouse button, put it under cube 2, and then when I move cube 2, cube 3 goes with it, right? The disadvantage, though, is that the two objects have to be kind of nested underneath each other. Oh, come on, man. Oh, it's just frozen. Oh, Lordy, come on, come on. There you go. Okay, so the disadvantage is that we have one cube nested underneath the other, right? So I'm going to hit Shift P to unparent it, right? So if I go, this is controlling that, and go constraint, parent constraint. But if I open up the option box, what I'm basically saying is, look, have those two objects follow each other, maintain the offset. I'll show you what happens if I don't maintain the offset. Well, I'll just tell you. If this is off, the minute I activate the constraint, this will just pop to the exact same location as the parent's cube, right? So I want to maintain that offset, keep that distance apart, and mimic the translate and rotate parent-child hierarchy, except the objects can be separate. That's all it is, right? So when I apply that, right, and I grab this guy, I can move him around, I can rotate him, and we've got that parent-child relationship, right? I can also come over here, and I can move him independently, right? So it's a parent-child relationship, except they don't have to be parented, right? So that's all a constraint is. So you got a couple of them. The parent constraint, if we open up the option box, shows translates and rotates. You can turn them on or off, which makes the other ones redundant. But the point constraint is a parent constraint, but just translations. And the orient constraint is like the parent constraint, but just rotations, right? And you can choose which axes, etc., right? And then we've got a scale constraint, which I've never used in all my years, but may come in handy one day. Same sort of thing, right? You also notice with all three of them, you have a maintain offset. Curiously, actually, if we look at the parent constraint, there's no scale, right? So that's something to sort of keep in mind as well. And then we've got an aim constraint, which will take the child object and make that a target of the parent object. So wherever you move the child, the parent is following and turning and looking at it, right? And then we've got pole vector constraint, which it's complicated to explain. I'll talk about a little bit later when we look at rigging legs. And a new one, a rivet. I've never used this one. That's interesting. I'm going to explore that. We have motion paths constraints. So you can have an object attached to a motion path, right? And a bunch of others. I'm not going to go into the ones below the line here, actually. So that's all those constraints do. All right. So I'm going to come in here. And I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to Set Project. Because it sent me to the wrong project, Spidey and the Kid. So I want to go to this one here. So I'm going to set that project. Let's try that again. Am I in the right directory? Let's see. So I'm going to set that project. In here. Oh, yeah. I have to go in here. Oh, my MGear tools have finally finished downloading. Thank Christ. Okay. So there's my hallway fight. I'm going to, now that that project is set, when I go to open scene, it'll take me right there. Thank you. And we will pop open the second one, which was new. Actually, I want to open up the first one, which I should have known just by looking at file size. All right, so I'm going to bring this guy in. I like that. I like that. Bring the Skyrim. Okay, so whilst that's loading up, let's pop back in here to our MGears Artist tools, right? So globally, I've stored the tools here, but I want to go back to where I've kind of put them in with my project here. So we got the MGear inside my project menu, right? So you're finally awake. Who's awake? Oh, is it? Oh, finally awake. Awake. Oh, I see. Okay. So I'm going to come in here, and now I've got the 3.4.0 version folder in here. So I'm going to edit my batch file, right? So with that batch file, I'm going to set my Maya module to 2020 and the Global Artist Tools plugins Maya 2020, and it's MGear 340. Let me make sure that I'm just going to double check that directory. I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to come in here. I'm going to paste it. If all is good, it should take me. No. Did I put it somewhere else? Let's see. Oh, I called it MGear 2020. I didn't mean to do that. I meant to call it MGear. Reports it. Okay. So I'm going to try this again. Copy that directory. I just want to make sure it goes to the right spot. Okay. There you go. So now I know that when I launch that script, Windows will go to a directory that does exist, right? So that's cool. And then I want it to go in and launch the Maya executable. Fine, let's save that. And we'll go back to where that batch file is. Which was in here. Projects. Nope. No, it was in. Yeah, animation, projects. Here. Oh, I've just gotten lost. Al, do you know how I can upgrade Maya to 2021? Because my license is only working for the 2018 version. I don't know. I'd imagine it's just a matter of grabbing the educational license of 2021, downloading it and installing it. Right? Right? Or am I missing something here? Okay. Twenty 20 M Gear 340. So this is kind of interesting, guys. I've opened up the Maya M Gear and I can see the changes I made here, but the preview window shows me the old version. Something to keep in mind. Computers can be a little bit tricky. I'm going to save this just in case. It says I have the licenses on my account for 2020 and 21, but it won't run. It won't run. Define it won't run. Like you double click and nothing happens? Okay. Did you uninstall the previous version of Maya? Whilst I'm answering that question, I'm going to right click and run this as an administrator. It should be in the process of launching Maya for me. Should be. Licensing issues have always been classically really touchy. I don't know. Not without sitting in front of your machine. You know, it could be. Well, the first protocol would be your environment variable is pointing to the wrong license server. That's the first thing I'd check, right? This oftentimes happens, especially if you got one second. Especially if you've got multiple pieces of software, all kind of accessing the same sort of license server, like if it's an RLM license server or something of that nature, then you can have sort of issues like this. Oh, let me move this out of the way here. Yeah, Ty, I don't know if I'll be able to help you with that. Yeah, that's the best. They'll walk you through setting up your environment variables to access the license server. That's probably, again, where your issue lies. Okay, so just waiting on this preload. Initial launch of a plugin usually takes a fair amount of time while it initializes the plugin. Ideally, that's my bad. I should have double checked that I had the M-Gear plugin installed last night. But, you know, I've talked about a few interesting sort of facets of well, tools that you will need to kind of get accustomed to. More than just, especially with the constraints, more than just using it to pick up weapons. Having a character pick up a cup of coffee, that's a constraint, right? So oftentimes, if you're very clever about the constraint, you can have a movable constraint. So where I grab that coffee cup, right? I don't constrain to the middle of the hand, do I? I can constrain to that knuckle if I know that that's how it's going to animate, right? And then I can constrain, I can create another sort of joint here, right at that location where I'm going to make contact with the cup. But that's a scene-specific solution. So if you have another character who just wants to grab the cup like this, you'd have to come up with a different constraint system, right? But that's how you get characters to pick objects up. Is there a window waiting for me to click on something? Okay, that's taking a fair amount of time. Jeez. Okay. Okay, while I'm waiting for the M-Gear toolset to load, I'll ask again, are there any questions? Nope. Okay. Sounds good. I'm just waiting because Ty is typing. I'm a bit concerned because it shouldn't be taking this long. Would I suggest? Would I suggest watching martial artists and study their movements and actions with weapons? I wouldn't suggest it. I would demand it. You cannot animate complex motions from your head. You just can't do it. Even when you study stuff, you can't animate properly. I'll give you an example, right? So myself and Sarah Taylor and Sarah Tosh, the three of us were working on prototype stuff for Skate, right? And none of us skate. And I studied reference videos to get all of the different, kick flips and what have you, right? And ollies and things like that. And trying to let's talk about the ollie. So I'm trying to get the ollie accurate. So I'm breaking down the reference material. I've got the timing and I'm posing the character right. And Nick Burke, who comes by, he was our Kinematics supervisor, and he looked at my animation and said, "That's not right." I'm like, what do you mean that's not right? And I got all real huffy because I take my craft as an animator seriously. And he said the front foot of the front toe of the lead foot is not dragging across the grip tape and pulling the board. And that's the insight from a skater. And when he said that, I saw it as plain as day. All right. Because as you're animating, you may think you understand emotion, but unless you're a practitioner or have at the very least acted it out, you don't know what physics is involved to cause the ollie to work properly, right? Little things like that. This might be a dumb question, but do we have to make the model to animate, or are we given models? You're given models. You guys are given models, right? Did you guys get the body mechanics model that I dropped into the chat last class? This is an animation module, right? You'll waste a whole bunch of time modeling and rigging a character, right? So you will definitely be given the model, right? In fact, I will do that now, right? So let's see if. So for example, I just grabbed the Dex rig and dropped it in there, right? There you go. That's one of them. Send over Fred. Oh, that one's too big. Will the... Oh, the other guys are too big, man. Oh, they're too big. Okay, so I will likely have to send you guys a link. Let's do that. Animation. There we go. Okay. Yes, absolutely. Pop it up in here. Yeah, okay, that's cool. So let's stick that guy up there, right? And I'm just going to test the link. Yeah, there you go, right? So when you click on that link, you'll get this nice folder with the hero character and the thugs character available in it. And you can grab it and download it. Attendance. Haha. That's exactly what I was talking about. I almost forgot. All right, so I'm going to grab attendance real quick. I think we're having no luck with the M-Gear toolset. I'm going to have to sort of backpedal yet again and then see what we can do. Okay, so I'm going to take attendance, 3D computer animation. We are in the class channel. And I want everyone. There you go. And just double checking. Sweet, got everyone. There you go. Oh, it did load. Oh, cool. There it is, right? So up here, guys, M-Gear, right? I'm going to move my camera out of the way because it's blocking the top of my monitor. So I couldn't see the menu items that were across the top there. Yeah, that's good. So here we've got the M-Gear tool set. You got a whole bunch of different tools available for you. It's going to be worth exploring, actually. I do want to make some time and check this out. So now, if I come in here with the M-Gear tool set loaded, if all goes well, I'm going to come in here and then set my project into the animation sequence 1, the hallway fight. Yep, that's the one we want. Set that, and then open up this. It's a fairly large file, so it'll take a couple of minutes to load. But I'm hoping Spider-Man comes in intact. And then we'll bring the baby. This web captioner is just garbage. I'm speaking too quietly. Okay, that's better. It's a volume thing. Oh no, that's not the mic volume. Okay, so got the preload. Shapes being used, that's fine. Click OK, we'll click OK. And there we go. So if I come into my cast, I'm going to grab my hero here. I'm going to hit F. Perfect, right? So that's our character. We can also come in here and turn on our hardware texturing if you want. And then light up those textures, which is cool. I'm a little bummed out because I had a little bit more work involved on this character, but that's okay. We'll take a look at that. I'll see if I can dig up that file a little bit later. So how did I set this up, right? Well, you can see straight away I've organized myself in terms of group nodes, right? So I don't need to show you how to create a group node, right? So you come in here and they act for me like folders, right? Now, the one big caveat is this works in an animation kind of context, doesn't work when you're animating for games, and I'll tell you why in a second. But I've organized my shots here so I can create my cameras, group them. You never, ever, ever animate using your perspective camera, top, front, or side. They're grayed out for a reason, right? Maya needs those to create these windows. So if you use one of them, you're screwed, right? So straight away, create your own camera, right? So in here we got shot one camera. I brought in my cast members, but I've broken them down to hero and thugs, and then my set, right? So all I've got so far is my ground plane. So let's come in here, and I've got my Spider-Verse character here. You can see that it's referenced in, and I've got a toy here. I want to find out where that toy is. Where did it go? Oh, there it is. So I put that in Spidey's hand, right? And I want to reference in the baby. So let's come over. First of all, anybody not understand what I've done here in terms of organizing myself? Are there any questions about that? Because now's my opportunity to clarify anything that you guys don't quite understand. My microphone, by the way, guys, is maxed right out. The web settings for this page, the volume's maxed right out, so I'm not entirely sure. I'd have to crank up the gain, but then my voice will be all like, so I'm not entirely sure. It's gonna require digging a bit deeper to turn that volume up. Okay, so no questions about this. So I'm gonna come in here, go File, create reference. Where are we? Create reference, right? Click on that, and it's gonna ask me what I want to reference in. Now, here's something to be careful of. Remember I told you that when you submit stuff, submit the entire project because of all the folders in here, right? Yes, absolutely. Otherwise, none of the scenes you hand in to me will work. But I've taken it one step further. Outside the project file, I have a characters file that sits separate. That's something to be aware of, right? So if you have your characters folders sitting outside your Maya project, you're gonna have to remember to include those as well, and the directory path to it as well. It's gotta be identical, right? So I believe that in the thugs folder, even though it's not really a thug, it's in there somewhere, children, right? So in here, I've got a KC rig. So I'm gonna reference this guy in. So straight away, I'm going to organize the KC rig. All right, I'm going to middle mouse button, drag and drop it into the cast. And then again, middle mouse button and drag it into the hero group node. So it's there, right? Now, the interesting thing about the way referencing works is that you will get something called a namespace, or like the root level name of the file that you're bringing in, followed by a colon. It's just to help Maya keep track of making sure that you don't, let's say I bring in another baby, the same KC rig, right? Maya will get confused and not know which one's the real KC rig. Maya won't know if you want to replace the one in the scene or what do you want to do? It'll look at the two and it'll be like, they're both the same. What do you want me to do here? Do you want me to delete one? What do you want me to do? So Maya automatically creates what's called a namespace to say, okay, look, this is the character, and I've created this for you. And when you bring in another KC rig, it'll say, I will give you a new namespace if you want to keep that separate, right? I hate namespaces, but I'm just going to leave that in place for now. And again, it's just to, keep your scene organized. A couple of points I've done here, right? So I grabbed the KC rig. Notice that you will run into this, guys. Anybody run into this already? The geometry comes apart from the skeleton, comes apart from the controls. Yeah, this is called an inherited transform, right? Yeah, it happened with Flower Sack. Yeah, this is called an inherited transform. The only way around it is to understand what you need to move that won't multiply with any other transforms. So what's going on here is the transforms, or the value that I add to the translate x is being multiplied to the translate x on the geometry, right? And so with multiplication, you get that, right? And I just made that mistake because I grabbed the group node, which has its own set of transforms that are multiplying onto these transforms, multiplying onto those transforms. So it's just a bunch of crazy maths happening in the background, right? This is what the rigging controls were created for. So if I just grab the base, there you go, right? Because the base of the character is constrained to the other controls of the character, which move the joints, which move the geometry. The only thing that has transforms on it is the root controller, right? This is why we create a root controller for a character, right? So when we want to move the character around, it's just like grabbing a toy character and grabbing it at the plastic base and moving it around, right? And that's why it looks the way it does. So this is the master control. It's called a few different things. Excuse me. It's called the trajectory joint when you're rigging characters for games. It's just that master control node that Maya can use to move a character around, right? So the next thing we need to do is to set up our character with selection sets. Now, the best sort of thing to do is to, well, you can either combine these all in one sort of custom tool shelf, but that's a little bit annoying. You can also create custom tool shelves for each character, right? So let's do that, right? So we're going to come in here, and I will come into my shelf tabs, and I'll create a new shelf, right? And in here, I'll name it something so I can see it straight away. Actually, I'll name this after the naming conventions I've given it. So this is my hero, but these will be my KC selections, right? So with this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this character up, but he's in situ already inside the scene, and it's going to be difficult to, like, what if I go to select his one controller, but I'm selecting the dudes in the background, right? So let's isolate this character so we can set the character up properly, right? So to do this, I'm going to grab the top node. Now notice how Maya selects stuff, right? I've grabbed the top node, but it hasn't grabbed anything underneath it, right? So what you generally have to do is right click and then select hierarchy, and then it'll grab everything underneath it. Oh, the character's set up that way. Never mind. I'll show you a couple of different ways of separating this character. So the first thing you can do is just in the viewport with a group node selected, this should work. There is a toggle that will allow you to isolate the selected, right? You see that here? Click on that. It'll make everything but the selected disappear, right? So that's quite handy, right? So this will allow us to set up our character, but it's a temporary solution, right? Now, if you find that you need to isolate various parts of your scene quite often, you can also go into the channel box. And up until now, we've just talked about the transforms, rotates, and scales up here, right? Well, down here, we have available to us a bunch of layers, right? Now, a whole bunch of these layers have come over from the reference file. We'll just ignore those. I'll show you how to create your own. So you can come in here with that character selected. We're going to create a new layer for display, right? Now you have a few different options here. You can create an empty layer and then add objects to it, but I usually go over here, which is create a new layer and assign the selected objects, right? So we get this layer set. Oh, no, where did it? Oh yeah, up the top, sorry. Now this we'll want to name straight away, right? So I usually leave the layer and then we'll go hero and then Casey, right? And then again, what that will allow you to do is to really quickly control that visibility so you can go through and you can turn everything else off, right? The other thing that makes the display layer super handy is this third box over here. Now what this does is it allows you to template your geometry, right? So that you can't, oh no, actually this isn't quite working because I don't have the geometry group in there. Let me right click and add those guys in there. So I've just added the geometry into that layer. Now the handy thing is I can template it, right? Which means it's unselectable and wireframed. But let's say you want to see your character but not be able to select the geometry. Well, there's referencing as well, which lights up the character fully textured, but you can't select the geometry. And then you can go in and grab the controls and animate away, right? So there's a few different ways of controlling visibility there. But in my case, I'm just going to grab the whole Casey group and isolate select. And then we'll set up our key controls for this. So I'm going to come over here. Now, this is the one thing I don't like about these body mechanics rigs is that there's no one group controller. Like I have to come in here and find shift select each of these. Oh, sorry. Shift select each of these guys, right? That are control objects. Because they're not all sitting. We've got a bunch of group nodes in the way. They're not all sitting in the same sort of spot, right? But that's okay. The group nodes are a really effective rigging tool. And I can show you, I can talk you guys through that later on. Okay, so I'm just going through and grabbing all of my control objects. This might be actually a good idea, a good time to template my character, right? So when I template it, I can see my controls a little bit better. So I know I'm selecting them. And hit F to frame up if I run out of camera space to move. And I'm just going to shift select all these guys actually, right? So with that all selected, I'm going to come over here to my create set, quick select set, right? And then I'll call this set all. I'm going to add this to my Casey shelf, right? So that means when I click here, all my control objects are selected, right? So you can go through and set up sort of individual pieces, right? So you can set up, let's just do it. Go and create set, quick select set, and this will be set arm and left, right? Now naming convention too should be fairly logical. Actually, I can't read that icon, so I might come in here and edit it. So I might call this, pop up here, and I know they're quick select sets, I'll just call it that. Right, arm left, and same with this guy. I'm gonna edit this, come back here, just call this all. So it's just a little bit more readable here. Oh, I don't think I included the shoulder actually in that last one. But anyway, you get the idea. So I'm going to come over here to set, quick select set, and this will be my arm right. Right. So there we go. Let me select the left. Oh, I did select the shoulder. That's good, right? So you can set keys on individual limbs, but I don't want to do that today, right? As long as I've got the key all set up, right? So that's cool. I've got that. I'm going to turn off Isolate Select and bring the entire set back. And I'll also turn off the templating so I can see the kid, right? So the first thing we need to do is get the yeah, let's get the kid into Spidey's arms, right? So I'm going to move the kid into the original position. Now, the sort of the base COG, well, let's talk a little bit about that once we get the character closer. And now, you might see me make mistakes with the base controller because back in my day, the base controller was optional in terms of putting it into your keyframing solution, right? And the fact that you could grab the COG of the rig and move the character up and down, and it was fine, right? But these days, it's best practice to kind of keep that central controller in mind. So I'm just getting this kid into a little bit of a pose. So I'm trying to think about what I want in terms of what's happening in the opening shot. So my plan is to have a shot on the thugs, and as we come up, it slowly reveals we got Spider-Man struggling with a baby, right? So the whole point of what I want to design here is a fight scenario where the baby is just crawling from left to right down the hallway, chasing after a little Wall-E toy, and Spider-Man's meanwhile in the background fighting these thugs, and at the same time trying to protect the baby, right? So that's sort of what I want to work on, right? So I'm going to set up the first initial pose. Now I'm thinking in terms of how I want this shot to unfold, and when we see the baby, we want to see the baby in the process of crawling up Spider-Man, right? So I'm just going to take the arm controls and then just pose the character. I just want to, the very first thing I do when I'm sort of searching around for a pose is to get the character out of an A pose as soon as possible, right? And I don't know if I want the kid looking at Spidey. I want the kid to be distracted by something, right? It's like the kid is using Spider-Man as a ladder to get to something else. And then I'm trying to think about how, you know, the pelvis would tilt. And let's bring one of these legs up. And we'll rotate that down. Another thing that I sometimes get lost on is when to rotate the foot controller and when to use the ball and toe controls, which we'll talk about in a second. Okay, so with the rotational gizmo as well, I want to be able to accurately see how things are rotating. So I'm going to hold down E, right click, left click, and I'm going to go to gimbal. So it is a gimbal, right? Oh, why is it not updating the gimbal? Oh, yeah, it is. Okay, so there we go. And so this is where things get a little bit dodgy coming in here to pick controllers. So I am going to, probably not this class, but next class, show you how to set up what's called a picker page, right? And a picker page is just kind of like a little sort of UI that has a kind of a picture of your character with in an A pose with little areas that you can click on that will select the object that you need in the window, right? So I'll show you how to set up a picker page in a second. We will need it eventually because it will become quite complicated to try and animate this character in that close a proximity to Spidey, right? And again, you can see things like accidentally selecting stuff. Now, I'm trying to show you sort of a tools-less way of animating in the beginning because it'll demonstrate how important it is to get certain things in place before you start animating. So let's now, here's a danger as well. I am animating this baby crawling up Spider-Man like I would scale a hill or a mountain, right? So this is definitely where you would need reference material. Unfortunately, and I've had a look around, it's hard to find reference material for a character, a baby character climbing up an adult or trying to get in a higher position. I'll show you what I've come across for reference material just to describe the process of how to interpret reference material to fit the needs of what you're after. So I'll show you in a second. Look for Blur Studios Rockfish. From my memory, it was the closest thing. This short film had the closest motion to what I'm after. Yeah, Rockfish. That's an old short film. And let's see if we can jack the quality up. We can't jack the quality up. That's okay. I'm just fast forwarding to where I know the motion is that I'm looking for. I think it was in the aftermath here. Let's see. So this little creature's worried about his buddy, but his buddy's still alive. That's the bit, right? I love that. It's just like crawling all over his buddy. And that sort of emotionally connected with me too, because, you know, as a father, I know that sometimes your kids are like all over you and you're like, whoa, wait, whoa, right? So it's this sort of vibe. Now, it's not this exact motion I'm referencing, not at all, because the baby will move differently, right? But it's this sort of emotional vibe or message that I'd like to try to achieve, right? This whole like, I'm barely in control. I'm barely holding on to this kid, right? So I think it's less about the crawling motion of the kid and more about the reactions of Spider-Man, right? So that's cool. This is good for an initial pose. I will obviously change it, but I can click on all and then hit the S key, and I've got keyframes on everything. So that pose is locked in, right? So I'm going to flip on over to the next pose, which will be Spidey. And I did have a Spidey shelf, but it's gone. I'm not going to bother with this. Yeah, I'm not going to bother with the Spidey shelf, right? It's the same kind of thing. You just got to find the controllers that you need and set it up. Now, the Spidey rig is quite a complicated rig because it supports a variety of different features, right? Including squash and stretch and things like that, right? Oh, it's reacting really slowly too. That's the hips. Okay, and oh, that's the stretching of that. Where was that one control? Master. Is it this one? No, that's the one I had. That's the whole. So that's the whole character. Let me hit the F key. It might be better. So I'm going to go over to the outliner, hit the F key to unfold this hierarchy. So that's the body controller for all. And that's the global controller, the local controller. Let's see what else we got down here. And just want to check the feet, make sure I haven't, looks like I've, oh, there might be a few things missing in here. I think I need to check whether or not the IKFK switch. So I'll talk you through what I'm doing in just a second here. I just want to see if what I think is going on is going on. Okay. Yes, it is. Okay, cool. I'm a bit disturbed that the joints have been left behind here. That's quite unusual, but I'm just going to, for now, just turn off the joints in the display. So I'm going to go down to show and hit the joints, turn that off. Okay, so what I was looking for were IK leg controls. Now this is a good opportunity for me to show you the difference between an IK and an FK leg, right? I won't get into sort of rigging them per se, but it's one of the first areas of rigging complexity you guys will be introduced to. Now, what is IK, what is FK? Well, FK is generally how you saw me pose the baby out. It's called forward kinematics, right? So that means when I take this leg and I want to rotate it, I'll rotate the top of the leg and I'll go down here and I'll rotate the bottom of the leg, right? That's forward kinematics. But what if I want to just lift the foot and move it, right? So that's inverse kinematics, right? So this means I can just grab this controller and just move it, and the leg will move, right? So I don't have to rotate the top of the leg and rotate the lower leg and et cetera, et cetera. I can just move the foot where I want it. Now, the two techniques have their advantages and their disadvantages, as with everything in life. But most character rigs these days will have a switch that will allow you to change from forwardly animating something to inversely animating it. So for example, with the arm, you can animate me grabbing a cup of coffee by rotating the arm, rotating the forearm, rotating the wrist, and going to grab a cup of coffee. Or you can just grab my by the wrist and go, and then animate the fingers being open and grabbing the cup of coffee, right? Ooh, I'm doing all this in front of the webcam that's just lost its connection. Okay, let me restart this. I have no idea how long my webcam has been down. Let's restart this and see if we can get it back going again. Oh, it's not sensing. Waiting for the connection. Connect. All right, I'm just going to have to leave that. But you get the idea with inverse kinematics and forward kinematics anyway. Now, most character rigs will come with a control that will allow you to switch between the two. And the Spider-Verse rig comes with its controls up here in this little icon here. So when I grab the arm, you can see there's all these additional things that I can do to the arm. I can stretch it, scale it, do all kinds of stuff. Up at the very top, you will generally see as the first control is an IK-FK blend. So again, I'm going to take the left arm and set that to 1, and then we'll take a look at the difference, right? So again, if I wanted to have Spider-Man reach out and grab the baby, I would need to go like this, and then over here, like this, and then maybe he's reacting a little bit to that, right? Like, whoa, kind of thing. Or, so that's forward kinematics, or I can use inverse kinematics, which I think is that control. Let's try it. Ooh, yep. I can just grab the arm and whoa. And I should be able to, I should have the, no, it hasn't attached the wrist controller for me. I got to grab this guy. There we are. And I'm back to the IK controller and something like this, right? Right? So two different kind of methods of keyframing, right? Or not keyframing. Two different methods of controlling the character. Now, 90% of people that I show this to will go, well, IK seems easy, right? And I think we find it easy because it's very much like a marionette. You know, you pull the strings of the marionette and et cetera, et cetera. But there are disadvantages from an animation standpoint to just purely IK animating a character, right? One of the key things being, is it's very, very difficult to get any kind of overlap and drag action using IK only animating techniques, right? So from a purely kind of animation standpoint, as in terms of an art form, that's one major, major disadvantage, right? It seems like a small thing, but believe me, every diehard animator out there is just like, I gotta have my overlap, I gotta have my drag, I gotta have my overshoots and settles and all these other techniques, which I'll talk to you guys about a little bit later, right? Now, curiously enough, the majority of game characters, I gotta be careful how I say this actually, because a lot has changed in the last 5 years. But generally, a lot of game characters were full body IK, because that's all you needed back in the day, was just the body mechanics, very simple body mechanics of a character moving around doing stuff, right? The disadvantage of forward kinematics, imagine a character walking along a wall and his hands sort of tracing along the wall, right? You'd have to rotate the, like, I'll see if I can explain this with Spidey. You'd have to rotate the arm and then rotate the hand into place. And it would just be an exercise in frustration, right? Because it would just be a series of rotations after rotation after rotation, right? Where IK solution would be easier because you just grab the wrist and place the hand against the wall and job done, right? But you'll see as I go through this sort of scenario of having Spidey struggle with his kid, that forward kinematics in this particular case is actually much better. I don't like how Spidey's off balance, so let's move that foot over a little bit. Oh, we've got FK. So I generally like to start off any leg animation with the IK-FK blend set to 1 so that I have the IK controls. Now it's called IK-FK blending because switching from IK to FK is not an easy task, right? You actually have to come up here and just like I did with the constraints, set a keyframe for when the IK is at 1 or when you're using an IK control or when it's set to 0, which is an FK control. There are a few other more complicated things in terms of IK-FK blending, but it's best if we get into it and I show you some of the problems that we might encounter. Right? So, and that's it. I'm just posing my character out. One of the things I like to do straight off the bat is break up all the 90-degree angles. Nothing screams CG more than a set of 90-degree angles. And I think I'm just trying to indicate a little bit of a weight shift. Now I need to find the COG that, oh, maybe it's because there's an IK-FK blending in here. Not sure. But I'm trying to find the control that will allow me to lower. There should be a control in here somewhere that allow me to do it with the whole, that's with the spine, the whole body. There it is. Crazy. Okay. That's what I'm after. And then now I can put a little bit of a Now, in this scenario, I'm keeping in mind that Miles Morales is just a kid, and maybe sort of to make a baby climb Spooderman, but it's 11:13. Oh yeah, it's 11:13. Okay, cool. Again, lost track of time. So that's basically it. I'm not doing anything else other than posing. Now I wanted to get into the actual posing part of the actual artistry of animation today, and yet again I had to go through setup stuff, which is just really sort of frustrating. But you see where I'm going with this, right? It's kind of like, whoa, and he's just like reacting to this kid climbing up Spider-Man, right? Meanwhile, these guys in the background are like, what about us, man? We're here to kick your ass. You know, that kind of thing, right? So, and then Spidey will be like, what, hang on a minute, guys. Hang on. You know, and that sort of thing, struggling with the kid. So that's where I'm going with this, right? So I'm going to dive back into this. Now we have to set up selection controls for the Spider-Verse rig. So next class, I'll show you how to set up a picker page. And then I'll talk a little bit more about the tools down here, right? And how they help you, how to install them, first of all, and how they help you in the animation process, right? So I'm going to save that off. I've got incremental save turned on. And then that's it. Sorry for keeping you guys 15 minutes over. There was a lot of stuff I covered today. None of it what I intended to cover today, but it's all useful stuff for you guys. Yes, absolutely. The graph editor is something that will be like bread and butter. You always have open whilst you're animating, right? But let's lay down some keyframes first, and then I can talk about how that works. I do remember you asking me the same sort of thing last week as well, and I did go through it briefly about lining up your keys in the graph editor and making sure you have a neat graph editor. Not because I'm a neat freak, but because it will save you headaches a little bit later on. I'm just typing something to Richard. Okay, yeah, so Richard is asking me whether or not we have a meeting today, and we do, so I better let you guys go. Okay, so I will talk to you guys later. Cheers, guys. Hey, Richard.